David, tell us about this paddock. What's the significance of this one?
The significance of the story I want to tell here is we had a fire here in 2005 was a very dry year if you look at the total for the year, but there were 3 good falls of rain right in the growing season, September, October, November, and there was a lot of grass on Allendale. And we were about to put all our stock in this paddock we're standing in now, and then there was a fire in early January 2006. And it was a pretty ferocious fire because of the amount of material was there. It burnt a third of the property, 23 kilometres of fencing, and we do insure our fences, so the disruption to the management of the place was more about pulling down all the burnt stuff and getting. I put the fences back, not absolutely where they were, changed a few things, but pretty much put it back the way it was. But the interesting thing was what happened after the fire, because it was completely black, this paddock.
It started just...
Yeah, just behind us, on the road.
Yeah, there's a road.
And anyway, so about a fortnight, 10 days to a fortnight after the fire, there was 64 millimetres of rain, which is quite a significant fall, and everything got a green fuzz on it, but there was virtually no rain for the rest of the year, to be honest. And so what came up was there's a weed that some of you will know called Amsinkia. It's a relative of Patterson's curse, but it's got a yellow flower. And it's very, very furry in the stem and leaf, and stock really don't like it. And your neighbours don't like it if you've got it. And I didn't even know that I had it, to be honest. But this paddock was almost a monoculture of Amsinkia, so it obviously had been in here at some point.
Yeah.
But it was just. It was frightening, really. It was sort of nearly 4 foot high by the time we grazed it, and that was a dilemma. Do we graze it? What do we actually do with it? And in my past life, I would have definitely sprayed it. But I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to graze it the way we graze all our paddocks and see what happens. And it was really like the paddock we talked about before with the cape weed. It was a one-off thing. We only saw it for one season. We grazed it. There would have been millions of seeds, billions of seeds probably in this 100-acre, 40-hectare paddock. The stock would have taken a lot of seed into paddocks adjoining, and we've virtually never seen a plant. We've seen the odd plant under a tree, but it's never assumed the proportions it did at that point. So
we attempted to, spray it or
I was going through a lot of social dilemmas, Charlie, as to what my neighbours were thinking of me. Nobody said anything, but it was fascinating to see that it corrected itself without any intervention from me.
Well, I guess it had done its job, hadn't it?
Well, possibly, yeah. This year's a bit different in that all the early Patterson's curse we had last year, it hasn't repeated. Some of the blue thistles that we have here, they're still quite feisty, but they come and go a bit, basically depending on the season and when you graze it in relation to when they germinate and want to grow. There are insects that get on the blue thistles, and they were very, very lacking in evidence until about a week ago, and they've suddenly appeared. So a heck of a lot of the blue thistles that we had, because it got so wet in the winter and early spring, a lot of them died because when it gets too wet, they just can't cope, and a lot of them died. But there's, on red rises is where you find them, and unfortunately I've got a couple of beautiful red rises right next to the Lachlan Valley Way. So,
people go, David, see all the thistles on David's place?
Yeah. No, we've had a couple of comments.
So the weevils they're here now. They've turned up.
They're here. And both types, the little black one that sucks the leaves and then pupates in the stem.
Stem, yep.
And then I've seen a few of there's a big gold one that sits on the top and he lays his egg in the head.
The head borer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're about, and so they make them pretty crooked, don't they? And
they do. Yeah. As we were saying before, the life cycle of the insect is shorter than the life cycle of the thistle, so sometimes there are definitely escapes. But in the Mediterranean where they come from, there's about 16 different types of insects that prey on them, and you never see big lashings of thistles where they originate from, as you do here, because they're part of an ecosystem where they've been imported here, and all those insects don't exist here.
Well, I guess it's a good thing we've got a couple of them.
Good thing we've got a couple.
So this paddock, in those years since fire and Amsinkia and grazing, I mean, there's a pretty diverse.
It is.
Bunch
It's
of
nearly
stuff
all
in there
annuals that we're looking at now, but this is one of the paddocks that we've thrown a bit of some of the 3 or 4 summer active species that are native. We've thrown a bit of that around off the motorbike, and it's gradually spreading.
Being what do you throw out?
Box grass, which everyone wants to call warrego grass, which I prefer, I must admit. So it's a paspalidium, native paspalidium. And then there's another one called arm grass, and it's a native type of millet, I think. And then there's Chloris truncata, which is an umbrella grass. Cooch. What else is in there? That's about it, I think. A bit of cotton panic.
Oh yeah.
Which is a bit of an intermittent thing. There's certain years suit it, and you get a lot of it, and then you mightn't see it again for a few years.
Have you got any divorce grass?
Oh yeah. Luckily this year we might.
Now, why do they call it divorce grass?
Oh, the girls don't like it getting around the verandas of the house. I had to buy my wife a flamethrower. We rake it up and then set fire to it.
Because the head dries and it just literally rolls away. It blows into
it's a great,
pools and
beautiful
doorways.
way of spreading seed, of course.
Oh, no, isn't it?
Nature's figured that one out.
Yeah, so we've got wild oats. I might get a bit of a close up of that, if you can see that.
Yeah,
wild
there's a lot of wild oats here.
Prairie.
That's actually
that's
soft brome.
Oh, that is a soft brome. The prairie's got the bigger head on it, hasn't it?
Just here, but there's quite a bit of prairie grass, which is an introduced perennial.
Back where we were, there was a heap.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of the common name is ripgut brome, which is another brome. The bromes, they've come from Europe. But the disturbing thing for me is that Europeans have only been living here for not quite 200 years, and the indigenous vegetation that lived here and evolved here hardly exists on most paddocks. That's a very disturbing thing, I reckon.
So what of the indigenous ones do you think you've got here?
Charlie, I can't think of the list.
Of the grass species.
There's about 15 species.
Forbs and legumes.
I've identified about 15 species of native perennial grasses.
Yep.
But I'm not saying that they're everywhere, because they're not. But our management is allowing them to spread. That's what I would say. So I'm throwing a bit of seed of species that used to exist here. Those ones I mentioned a minute ago, they all occurred here, but they've pretty much disappeared because of the way we've managed. So, but if you reintroduce the seed, and that's a tricky thing too. A lot of people have said to me, should I be sowing native grasses? And the dilemma is, you just might be sowing them into country that the conditions aren't suitable for them yet.
Yep.
Now it's 22 years since we started changing things, and certainly with the introduced perennials that we had in a lot of paddocks, they require all the inputs that we put into our conventional agriculture, superphosphate and what have you. And when you stop doing that, what happens over time is the balance switches a bit away from the things that require that input towards things that don't require it. And I mean, it's a shame, I think, in a way, that we didn't realise how fantastic a lot of these native grasses that evolved here are, because they evolved in a relatively low nutrient environment, which is, and the things we've been sowing, we're sowing into a low nutrient environment and then bumping them up with a whole lot of nutrients that we have to buy. So, I'm not trying to have a native grass farm, but any that want to grow here, I'm really happy.